Welcome to the Dripping in Black Podcast, where we celebrate Black excellence throughout the Black diaspora. Here's your host, David V. Lewis.
What's up, good people all across the world? This is the Dripping in Black Podcast. I am your host, David V. Lewis. And per usual, we have another fantastic guest who represents Black excellence. Today's guest is Rod Wallace. Rod, say hello to the world.
Hello. Peace. Good morning. Oh, I shouldn't. I guess I have. How are you?
Yeah, it's early in the morning. That's fine. They can catch it anytime they want to, but
absolutely,
we are recording in the morning. So, what's up, sir? How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Everything is great.
Yeah. So, Rod Wallace, you wear lots and lots of hats. You do a lot of dynamic things in a lot of different arenas. But when we say Rod Wallace, what's the first thing to come to mind for you? Who is Rod Wallace?
I'm a father. I'm a father and I'm a husband. And I take those roles extremely serious. I'm very careful to make sure that stands at the top of everything else.
Wow.
I'm also a creator. I recognize that a lot of the value that I have to the external world involves the constructions of my mind. So
Wow.
I develop ideas. I provide counsel. I place my trust within others, and I seek to serve through all things that I do. So.
Wow. All right. So, man, great words. I wish I'd have thought of that. Yeah, man, that's dope. So, but give us a little background about where you're from.
I was born in Flint, Michigan. Went to Flint Community Schools, south side of Flint, during, before in the 1980s, Buick City, which was the biggest manufacturing plant in the United States, closed. Flint was drastically affected. So growing up in the face of that, and then, but I always sought an understanding of life through reading. I was a reader. I love to read. I love to explore. I love to read encyclopedias and almanacs, comic books, newspaper. My father brought me the newspaper every day, the USA Today. So I read that every day after I turned about 7 or 8, and I read it every day up until I till I graduated from high school. Went to Eastern Michigan University, and first sought a degree in telecommunications and film, but shifted over to education due to the support and impact of some of the young men that I was on campus with. I just happened to be a part of a great social group that believed that education was, it meant the liberation of people. And I believed at an early age that there was a need for that type of lens, that African-American, that the people who were like me were engaged in spiritual and psychological warfare in this country. So I took that on very early. It transcended, being in Flint and going to Ypsilanti and going to Eastern Michigan. And yeah, I ended up graduating with a degree in history, at which time I started teaching in Northwest Detroit. Shout out to Detroit Service Learning Academy, formerly YMCA Service Learning Academy. And I taught there. I learned how to coordinate curriculum there. I learned how to lead there. I became a man there, to be honest, from college. And I hold my students, especially my students that I worked with early on, I hold them in the highest regard because they helped me to become a man.
Wow.
I was fresh out of college, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and they kind of said, we need you to lead us. And so I accepted that. And I'm always grateful for that. And so learn how to, learn school administration and operation and everything right there with a group of fantastic and dynamic other teachers and leaders who have spread out all over the educational landscape in Michigan and beyond, to all different kinds of all kinds of different organizations and districts. So I went from essentially being an uncertified teacher, because my initial thought was to graduate from college and go straight into grad school, and look to hopefully become a professor, a history professor. I wanted to write and be a history professor. But K-12 came calling and it really became a home for me. So, I was uncertified. I went back, I got my master's, I went into leadership. I became an assistant principal. I was there for 12 years total. I eventually ascended all the way to the principalship in the same building, which is, it's hard to do. Then I moved, I came out to Dearborn Heights, where I was the principal at Westwood New Tech until it meshed with Robichaud. And then I went out to River Rouge and continued in school administration there, built some fantastic programs, and really saw how a community and a school could become one. Shout out to River Rouge School District. Shout out to Derek Coleman, Terrence Wheeler, Elisa Berry Brown, all of the great, fantastic people who I work with there. And then eventually, due to, family circumstances and other things, I ended up having to do something that would allow me to be able to have a little bit more flexibility in my schedule. So I ended up answering the call to come to Eastern Michigan and lead their Upward Bound program. And in the process, I began working on my PhD simultaneously, and using that time to really expand my understanding of how education fits into the framework of society on a grander scale. So participating in a lot of different activities, a lot of different organizations, steering committees, advisory boards, just to learn. And
So I want to jump in. I want to touch on a few things.
Yeah, sure. I hope I didn't go too far. Hope I didn't go too far. I brought you all the way up.
Hey, it's no such thing as too far here. We're just conversing. So, but when someone's speaking, my mind get to work and the questions get to popping up. So I read a lot about your story. We also have crossed paths on several occasions. I come to meet you at Robichaud High School when I got hired in over there. It's crazy how the world works, but I ended up at Robichaud because Inkster schools closed.
Yes, sir.
And it's a story behind that. And then when I get there, there's two separate schools, which I really wasn't aware that it was two separate schools when I got hired in. And so there's two principals there. I'm under the Robichaud principal, but I see this guy, black dude, dressed in the suit, smooth, every day. I'm like, who is this dude? And we come to cross paths. We probably say hello and things like that.
Absolutely.
Through the hallways and everything, just kind of a nod, how we do when we see each other.
Absolutely.
So I always kind of recognized you and kind of the person that you represented yourself to be. And since then, we've kind of run into each other and this and that. But I want to get into first, specifically, you talked about the program director at Upward Bound at EMU. Talk a little bit about what that is for people that don't know what you do.
Okay. So Upward Bound is a federally funded program. It's a part of an umbrella of federal programs called TRIO programs. And these programs, at their foundation, at their base, they're intended to subvert income inequality. And they subscribe to the idea that in order to do so, you have to provide students who are low income and potential first generation college graduates with the support that is necessary and the experiences that are necessary to make college a potential reality for them. So what we do, it's a grant. It's a grant cycle, a 5-year grant cycle. So we're in the midst of that cycle right now. We're about to start writing actually for the next grant cycle, which would be 22. 2022, excuse me. So we provide academic tutoring. We work directly with a high school. We're funded to serve a certain amount of students. We work directly with a high school and provide academic tutoring and support to them several times a week. For us, it's Monday through Thursday, for 2 hours after school. And right now obviously we've had to transition the program to being virtual. We hire college tutors from Eastern and train them not only in effective tutoring strategies, but in effective mentorship strategies and trauma-informed practices, because many of our students, our students come from troubled waters in many cases.
Yes.
I don't like to generalize, but truth be told, a number of our students, we have to just be able to acknowledge and really stand in a foundation of understanding. Yeah. And that's something I'm really huge about that's a non-negotiable for me. And our team does a great job of preparing tutors to be able to do that. We also offer Saturday programming that is by grade level. We offer SAT prep for juniors. We offer resume building and scholarship writing for seniors. We offer financial literacy for sophomores and study skills for freshmen. My biggest focus is working primarily with the freshmen who are transitioning from middle school, because I do feel strongly about the fact that they get off to a strong start as freshmen. If they can, my rule of thumb has always been, if you can leave freshman year with a 3.0 grade point average, the chances of you going to college, anybody can go to college who graduates from high school, but the chances of you having to pay less to go to college skyrocket.
Yes.
Period, point blank. There are more classes failed as freshmen than any other subject. Than any other grade level. So I'm really hands-on with the freshmen. And we also do a summer academy program where our students stay on campus residentially for 5 weeks during the summer, last week of June all the way through July. From Sunday night to Friday night. We feed them. We have tutors and peer advisors that are in place, and we treat them like college students. They have core programming, core class programming that they have. They also have workshops that they do that basically we attempt to utilize their voice to determine what those workshops are. We've done obviously financial literacy, but also things like robotics and drones and stuff like that. And then we take the students out of state. That last week, that 6th week, and we take them out of state and we visit 3 colleges. So it's really a authentic learning experience for students. We tend to be extremely successful by every metric when it comes to getting kids to and through school. Now, there's a lot of X factors that can happen after students graduate, because ultimately our program is judged by how many of our students who participate in our program graduate from college within 6 years of leaving high school.
Okay.
And there's a lot of X factors that happen between graduation and 6 years after high school. So
no doubt.
It just illustrates the need. It just definitely illustrates the need. But also in the process, what I've chosen to do with Upward Bound is firmly integrate Upward Bound into the community and into the discussion in the community as an advocate for low-income and first-generation students, as a dot connector for our students and families to community resources, because there's plenty of community resources that exist, but sometimes there's a communication gap. So we fill that gap. We fill that need. We also operate as a conduit between the university and the community as well. Our program is housed in the community engagement department at the university, which allows us to say, to hear about different programs and things that's going on and say, hey, this is how this can help my kids. So let's partner and do this and do that. So we've built a number of great partnerships. And so it shifts from just being an educational organization to one that actually is engaged in social justice and engaged in social change. So I'm really proud of what we've been able to accomplish.
I'm going to jump in real quick. And there's a couple of things that I thought about as you were speaking. So COVID has hit. We're all living with COVID-19.
Absolutely.
And well, I shouldn't say that. We're all living with the COVID-19 pandemic. That's a little bit more different context.
Well, if you listen to what people say, they say you need to act like everybody is living with it around you.
But so how has that impacted what you do. I know you spoke a little bit about it, but talk a little bit more about it, specifically with the ninth graders, because I'm still in the classroom and I have a perspective of how it's affecting the ninth grade group specifically, and specifically the demographic to which we deal with. So talk a little bit about how COVID-19 has impacted what you're doing with Upward Bound.
We offer ourselves as a resource. When we present ourselves to kids, Dave, you know, when we go in classrooms and we make presentations, we make it where Upward Bound is the way out. Upward Bound is an opportunity to engage. It's an opportunity to make sure that you're prepared for what is next, because nobody really knows what is next. But we're saying, look, this is going to come to an end. And by the time you come out of it, if you deal with us, we can guarantee you that if you follow our process, academically, you will be in a place where you can go to college. This is temporary. So the engagement has to be high power. It has to be personal. It has to be individual.
And have you been able to accomplish that?
We've been very successful in terms of going into classrooms and getting kids involved. We turned all of our recruitment efforts and everything to online, and it's worked.
So talk a little bit about that. So, because, you know, we're in the virtual world. So like in pre-COVID, going into the classroom, meaning literally going into the classroom. Right? So going into the classroom looks different, right?
Right.
Talk about that. What do you mean when you say we're going into the classroom as Upward Bound?
So I partner with teachers and I say, let me get into your Zoom room for 15 minutes and talk to your kids. And I'll go in there hype, super hype. Like, what's up? Let's go. You know, I am telling you this. I'm the energy. I try to make the energy. I try to make it contagious. And so we have an online forum. We go through a presentation. We show kids a video of what our kids have done. And we talk statistics. Our kids are currently scoring 100 points higher than the rest of the school on the SAT. You know, we had 6 4.0s the first quarter of the school year. We had 27 students with a 3.5 or higher. Those are the people who are subscribing to the system and getting the help that they need. It just takes commitment. And so it's all about what I would tell anybody is it's all about your energy. This is tough for everybody. But if you subscribe to the same depressing mode that it can give you, you're no better than anybody else. So step to it with energy, step to it with love, step to it with a genuine interest. And then on top of that, once you get people involved, once you get people engaged, follow up, and communicate regularly. I just think about if I was still in the assistant principalship that I was at Roots, I would really stress upon my teams and my teachers about how important it is to have that one-to-one discussion and communication with kids and not just make it punitive. One of the biggest complaints, and I hope I'm answering your question, but one of the biggest complaints that teachers have is kids are not engaged, kids' cameras off, kids this, kids that. What are you doing to engage them? When the alternative is the internet, the alternative is Xbox. So you got to be high powered. Even just your human energy got to be high powered. You don't got to have all kinds of tech tricks and, you know what I'm saying? I got my lights and stuff in the background and this, that, and the third. You know, you ain't got to do all that. I mean, you just have to have real authentic engagement and listen to what they want to.
And I would say that engagement is a loaded word, because I can have something up like an anime character instead of my face and still be very engaged in what you're talking about if what you're talking about is engaging.
Absolutely.
You know, there may be reasons, again, talking about a demographic that we deal with, that I don't want to show what's behind me.
Absolutely.
You know, and so I think we have to be, you know, empathetic and sensitive to that as well. And so if I'm showing up, I always felt like this pre-COVID, you know, if the kid is showing up, you know, then it's on me from there. If they're showing up, then it's on me from there, you know, but again, I digress. This is about Rod Wallace. So, and it's a lot to talk about with you, Rod. So we got into the education part, but we know you are very passionate about something else, and that is hip hop. So talk a little bit about your introduction to hip hop, and then we'll get into some more specifics about what you're doing with regards to hip hop.
I was introduced to hip hop primarily by Paul Kennedy, my neighbor. Lived next door to me, and had the box, and his house was outside my bedroom window, and I'm listening to him play, Spoonie G and New York, Big City of Dreams and all that. This is like 82, 83. I mean, I'm young. And I love music before that. I used to sit in the barbershop and read the Jets top 20 singles to everybody. And it was like this impressive thing because I was like a kid. I was like a kid and I could read all that. So, but what I found was, hip hop was, they spoke my language. As a kid who I grew up in a Southern Christian household with a devoutly Christian mother. A father who worked in the plant. And somewhere in between that, I had to figure out who I wanted to be. So I was doing a lot of reading and everything. And hip hop I just really stuck to hip hop. And I looked at it as, like a tool of liberation. Like I looked at LL Cool J was as much a superhero as Batman and Superman was to me.
Indeed.
In the I'm Bad video, and then as I grew older, my favorite album of all time is Ice Cube's America's Most Wanted. Because it arrived in my life at a time where I was determining and figuring out what it meant to be a black man in America.
Okay.
And it taught me that it's okay to be intelligent.
Yeah.
It's okay to be masculine. It's okay to be strong, because these are the conditions with which you've been born into.
Yeah.
And so you have to create value. You have to create meaning yourself. So it started there and it expanded into me creating my own music, me wanting to understand and learn more about the technology involved in making music, getting more involved in how hip hop became like a praxis for discussion. I was one of the kids that was beating on the table in the lunchroom, with the 25 people was rapping and this, that, and the third. And when I got to college, that's who I was too. And what ended up, I started working on music and creating music and created projects before I left college. And when I left college and went into the classroom, I was finding ways to use hip hop in my classroom, whether it was, I was the teacher that was playing Jay Dilla instrumentals so quiet in the background that the class had to be drop quiet to hear it. And because they wanted to hear it, they would do it. So my class would be, when we were doing independent work and it was time to work quietly, at least, my classroom would be super quiet. So, and then having my kids perform, having my kids create rap songs about subject matter, using issues and topics and song topics in class to illustrate concepts in history, because I was a social studies teacher.
Most important.
Yes, absolutely. And I believe social studies teachers make the best principals too, but that's a whole nother discussion. Social studies teachers run the world.
We have to do that on the second
absolutely. So it went from there. It went from there to be
specifics about your hip hop, right? So you produced 4 solo albums.
Yes.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about those.
I left music when I got into administration. Because it was just too much. I ain't had time to kind of play around per se in that world while I was expected to lead, 50 staff members and 555 kids, because I felt like I had to step to that discipline with the same intensity as anything else. I wanted to learn everything. So I let music go for a minute. I got married, I had a child, and then music came back to me as like a tool for me to relax. And so I started to create music again. My wife actually bought me a piece of equipment that made it easier for me to do that. That was back in 2012. And started working on music, started connecting with people via the internet, making music, this, that, and the third. And then I started making beats and beats and beats and beats and beats to the point where I said I might as well just start putting out projects. So I put out a project in 16, one in 15, one in 16, one in 17. No, 16, 17, 18, and 19. I put out instrumental albums. In the course of doing that, but before any of this happened, I had already been an engineer and been mixing other people's music and doing all kinds of things. So I put out those projects, and then I also started to produce for other people and mix for other people. So other than doing my schoolwork and things of that nature, it just became second nature for me to do. And we built a music production program at River Rouge as well called Ramp, with a studio in the high school and a class where 125 kids were making beats every day.
Okay. And so you have since left River Rouge. Is that program still up and running?
Absolutely. Shout out to Travis B. Ramp, it still works. What I found was, and what me and Mr. Bean found was, there were kids that were coming to school just because of that program.
Yeah.
So if it means that one or two kids, if it's making one or two kids more interested, then let's put some resources behind it and build it. And it worked.
Yeah. So
it still
reminds
works.
me of Quan, because Quan used to do something very similar, Quan Nellums.
Absolutely.
And so my question now is there a way to spread that kind of teaching and draw throughout the schools? Have you considered that? Are you in the process of working on anything like that? Or
I am. That's kind of the foundation of my studies in my doctoral program. Although my program is urban ed, what my dissertation topic right now is, it's about informal and formal music education programs. Like music production programs, because they are somewhat rare. However, they have the capacity to teach kids STEM competencies and collaboration and problem solving and technology. So it's something that I've been looking to build and partnering with different vendors and things of that nature to be able to put together programs that meet the needs of kids and can teach them. And it gives us an opportunity to engage with the community in a different way, because there's a lot of young men that are in our community that are not looked at as necessarily hireable or, economically viable people, yet they understand this technology and they understand the discipline that's involved in it. So yes, that's kind of my target right now, is creating a program that's replicable across the different districts and schools.
Okay, excellent. So let's talk about some of the programs that you're already a part of, because they're plentiful, right? Let's talk about Grove Studios.
Okay. Grove Studios is a 24/7, 365 rehearsal and production workspace in Ypsilanti. When I moved out there to begin working, I started seeking a space to work on music and away from the office. Although I did have like a setup in my office as well, or I guess you could say I do. And I ended up partnering with them. I ended up identifying opportunities for them to engage in the community in really authentic ways. And we developed a partnership, and I had the opportunity to see them wish to be involved in the community in a more authentic way than just as a vendor. And they showed the heart and the desire to be able to do that. So I supported it. So I came on with them as the educational programs coordinator to identify grant-funded programs or community-based programs that can benefit from what Grove has. And Grove has like a production space, rehearsal workspace, podcast space. We've worked on some instructional things. We've done workshops. One of the things that we're doing right now is called the Amplify Fellowship, which basically provides local artists with studio time in exchange for community service. If they spend 3 hours a month in a community organization, they get studio time. And that's been very successful.
Now, how does a person reach out to you to become a part of that, or do you reach out to them? What's the process?
Well, it's based in Washtenaw County. A person has to be a resident of Washtenaw County, where Ypsilanti is. There is an application process that occurs every September. We just brought in our fellows, our this year's fellows, at the beginning of November. And there's an application process, and you can follow the Amplify Project on social media. Or if you go on Instagram, you can follow them at Amplify Washtenaw. Okay. And the vision is to expand that program across the state and hopefully across the country.
Yeah. All right. And so then there's also Formula 734 Hip Hop Project.
Okay.
Let's talk about that.
One of the programs that we built at Grove Studios, or we built through a partnership, was Washtenaw County, my brother's keeper, was interested in engaging young men in allowing them to appraise the narrative about them and then be able to shift that narrative as they saw fit. So we felt like the best way for them to do that was through music. And we recruited young men, well, an intergenerational group of men from ages 16 through 52 to create music at Grove Studios. What we did was we circled up, we had conversations about specific themes, we took notes, and then we said, okay, so this week we're talking about trauma. So this is what we've engaged in. This is the conversation that we've engaged in. Take this information and go write a song about it. And they would go write a song about it, and we would record it, and we created an entire album out of that. So the album was sold on Bandcamp, and it did extremely, extremely well. And it was a liberatory experience to the artists who were involved, because they learned a lot more than just about making an album. They learned about marketing. They learned about editing. They learned about, because we tried to keep it in their hands as much as possible. So yeah, that's something I'm extremely proud of. Yeah.
And then there's Project Plug In.
Well, Project Plug In is principally my brand when it comes to this intersection between hip hop and education. So all of the consulting and all of the project management and project and program management that I encounter is done under the umbrella of Project Plug-In. So we've done events in the community, such as we've done like production meetings, we call it the Dirty 30. So we'll invite producers to come to a place, and we'll give them all the same sample or whatever, and they'll have 30 minutes to make a beat out of it, and there's a prize at the end. Because what we want to do is we want to engage artists in different ways to collaborate, versus just I'm gonna get up on stage and I'm gonna perform and then I'm gonna step off the stage.
Yeah.
Because this is the language that our kids and our young people are speaking. Let's make sure that we give them the opportunities to do it in safe spaces. So that's what it was. And Project Plug-In is really just, again, my brand for doing those kind of things.
All right, great. And so you have this, you have a couple of philosophies that I want to dig into right now. Mm-hmm. You talk about the revolutionary act as an educator, or education being a revolutionary act, and this liberatorial perspective of hip hop being this conduit for liberation. Right? Talk about both of those things with this backdrop for me, Wallace. Hip hop has changed dramatically since you were introduced to it, right?
Yes.
Would you say that?
Absolutely.
All right, and so hip hop is a little bit different, and when you started talking about Spoonie G and all of that, that was that's me.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, you've traversed through hip hop basically from the beginning to what it is now. So in the backdrop of your mind, how the hip hop has how hip hop has changed, or maybe even evolved to what it is today. In the backdrop of your mind, keep that in mind as you're talking about these two concepts, if you will.
I think that those two concepts are closely related, and hip hop is interwoven into both of them. I think teaching is an act of revolution, because the only way to address the inequities of society is to change attitudes. And we can all sit and think about individuals who had an effect on the manner in which we saw the world. And as a social studies teacher, I know you understand that we walk a thin line between placing our own dogma and our own philosophies onto kids, which we do, with also granting them the ability to think for themselves. And I think that what we see in society currently is, because of the proclivity of media to spread and separate people and cut out the ability to think for themselves, cut out people's ability to think for themselves. That's where you get all this separation from. So in teaching is an act of social change, like of social justice. The act of teaching is necessary in order to, it's the foundation for social justice in a way, because if the intention of education is to give people the ability to prosper as citizens, the teacher themselves has to be engaged and interested in making that change themselves. And if they're not, you know what I'm saying, they're there. We know that there are kids who are going to be successful regardless of who's standing in the classroom.
Absolutely.
So therefore, as a teacher, especially a teacher of individuals who have been traditionally underserved, our activity walking into the classroom every day has to be one that is built upon service and love and information. So that's where that comes from. That's where my idea about teaching as an act of revolution is. And I think in the same token, hip hop is traditionally viewed as being what it is in the commercial market. Hip hop is the clownish, let's keep it a buck, clownish, gun-toting, reckless, and that's not the only thing that hip hop is, but that is what is commercially viable to companies, to Viacom, to Warner Brothers, to Universal. That is what is making money. So therefore, it's important to recognize that you have to look at the process of creating hip hop to understand its true value. The subject matter provides the money. The subject matter provides the money, but there are literacies that are involved in the creation of hip hop that are undermined. Primarily because hip hop is a Black art. In my opinion. So when I say it's a liberatory praxis, what I'm really saying is that a kid has to understand that because I love hip hop, it means that I also love wordplay. It means that I also love confidence. It means that I also love technology. It means that I also love creativity. Hip hop is a product of all of those things. If you get caught up with the gunplay, the things that are resultant from inequity, and the things that are, and we buy into it as a cycle. Hip hop has destroyed lives of people. Keeping it. I can say that as an advocate for hip hop, because we don't do a good enough job of saying, like, even though Ice Cube was my favorite album when I was 13, 14 years old, I knew that some of the things that were depicted were things that I was not prepared to understand and engage with myself. And a lot of our kids understand that as well, but we also have a lot of kids who are at a survival stage. So the one thing I also say about Ice Cube is anytime Ice Cube was a gangster on a record, he ended up going to jail or dying. Every record, if you really go back to those days. So that's why hip hop is so intertwined with education to me, because I just view it as being a vehicle and a medium. It's an artistic medium, like painting on a canvas.
So I want to ask you this, because I have this belief that you have hip hop and then you have rap, so when I think of hip hop, that's the true essence of the culture of
Absolutely.
Rap. And so I don't think of hip hop as being this buffoonery. I think
absolutely
being the rap that has been the stolen culture of hip hop being used to make money, and under the guise of hip hop, but it's really rap. So what are your thoughts on that? Would you say something different to that, or would you say that that's pretty on par? Is a difference between hip hop and rap, I guess is the question.
I think that KRS once said it best when he said hip hop is something that you are and rap is something that you do.
Okay.
And rap music in the commercial space is what it is. It's the most streamed music there is that exists.
Yeah.
I think hip hop, and there is a lot of rap that should not be considered to be hip hop per se.
Mhm.
There is, I mean, because hip hop, even in its inception, you know, when we talk about graffiti, when we talk about the 5 elements of hip hop, moving beyond this concept of, you know, the act. So DJing is really the manipulation of technology.
Yes.
Graffiti is the visual element of it.
Yes.
Graffiti is the visual element of hip hop. MCing is about leadership. B-boying, dancing is about the physicality of hip hop. And then the 5th element is knowledge of self. And the unfortunate truth is that knowledge of self is what delineates between a lot of rap music. Yeah. What becomes rap. You can rap from a hip hop perspective if it illustrates knowledge of self, and it illustrates understanding from the broader perspective that what you're saying has power.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is definitely a delineation. I think hip hop itself, the concept itself, has become commodified too. And what is scary is that we are not in control of that. There are, and we give away control of it so often.
Yeah.
We have the capacity to control it because every time people take hip hop culture and they use it to do something, we do something different with it. Like, for example, just real quick, Dave, this argument about breakdancing in the Olympics. There are people who are honestly offended. Like how you know, it's cultural appropriation, this, that, and a third. I need you to understand that Black people gave away breakdancing because that's what Black people create. We create culture. We create and export culture. That's the number one export of the Black community.
Wow. So
you can't be offended. You can't be offended by the fact that now it's Japanese kids that's about to win these gold medals in breakdancing, bro. You know, they about to smash that. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that's what it is, man. I think it's definitely a difference. I think that knowledge of self element is what is the biggest determining factor.
All right. So a question that I have for you, you're steeped in hip hop. What are your thoughts on, you know, the current state of hip hop?
I think what's beautiful about technology is the fact that you can find what you want. If I want to listen to what they play I don't listen to the radio, right? I don't listen to even the most popular playlists on streaming services. But there are artists around me every day that's making the type of music that inspires me. I have to support them as opposed to criticizing what artist A and artist B, who I don't know and don't have a connection with, is doing. I have to consider those people who are around me and who are speaking my language. I have been blessed to be connected with so many artists that tell my story, be it coming from the perspective of somebody trying to get a PhD to somebody who is who is a father and a husband.
Yeah. And
they still nice on the mic, but you know, they got grown man concerns.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so hip hop, the current state of it is, it's not even exploited anymore. Hip hop as a commodified entity is a machine. It's a machine that crafts culture over and over, and that culture gets commodified. I just think about how often, Dave, we hear about artists who complain about their deals and complain about, you know, I was exploited by the record company. That narrative is old. So as we empower each other, or as we empower to maintain control over this craft, we have to be willing to say, I don't have to be at a certain level or a certain stage in order to feel that is my criteria for success. Because when you go to that level, that's when the negativity and whatever else is going to be focused on. So hip hop to me has been decolonized. It has been democratized through technology. Hip hop and technology are like this.
Yeah.
It's been democratized. Kids can make a song at the crib and upload it to YouTube, and it might have 50,000 views in a month or something like that. And that's okay. And it might not be about nothing or whatever, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So again, it just goes back to the practice. The practice itself is what is most important, because there are a number of cognitive skills that are involved in creating music. And if we focus around that, as well as people who are telling the stories that we want to listen to, then everything will be okay.
Yeah. All right. I think we're going to have to wind down.
I'm sorry,
have to be continued for the first time. It's just so much more to kick it with you about Rod Wallace. I feel like we just, touching just a little bit of things, but it's been great having you to come on. There's a few things that I asked to close out, and I'm trying to figure out where I want to go with the first question.
Okay.
You talked a lot about Upward Bound. You talked about Grove Studios. I'm just going to combine them all and give you the question.
Okay.
If you could flip a switch and take those programs to the next level, what would that switch entail? So just deal with each one of them. Deal with your Upward Bound, deal with Grove Studios, and whatever other programs you want to toss in there.
I think for Upward Bound, especially at this point, is a look at the metrics involved. Standardized testing has no role to play in the current state of education.
None.
The metrics that are involved is that, I mean, and really, I guess that's the only part. I just look at how much of our work is, again, more about eliminating how much kids got to pay to go to college versus them getting to college, because they can get to college. It's just whether or not we're going to put them back into debt. Okay. So I think that's a big part of it for Upward Bound. Other than that, we good. Our kids are good. Our tutors are growing as young leaders. I'm very proud of what I've accomplished and what we've accomplished as a group for that. For
so
Grove
did I hear you
Studios,
say eliminate cost? Is that what I heard? Or
yeah. I mean, it would be fantastic if each of our students who passed through a certain amount of or they participated in a certain threshold of Upward Bound, that they wouldn't incur any debt from college.
Yeah. Almost like a scholarship, right?
Yeah.
Like, athlete gets a scholarship.
Yeah.
Performers get a scholarship, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So the student loan debt piece is something that's real major when it comes to Upward Bound. For Grove, I think just continuing to find the right programs. I think the right partnerships. One thing that we've been able to do with the Amplify Fellowship is we created something called the What Now Music Industry Forum, where we're starting to branch out and talk to other people that are speaking these same languages that we are. Like, connecting with Decipher in Detroit, and connecting with the Motown Music Collective, and connecting with Assemble Sound, who are all kind of trying to do this democratization of the music making process. So I think that's what I would ask for Grove. And additional funding is always great. Yeah. Additional people coming in the door and spending time with Grove is always great. But I really like for the programs that are there to be beneficial.
Talk about that funding. How is the program funding, and how would that additional funding look?
So Grove is just finalizing its nonprofit arm. So for example, for Amplify, additional funding would allow us to provide additional services to the fellows and bring in more and more fellows. So right now we're able to pay for their studio time, pay for production and engineering support, and things of this nature. We need additional funds to be able to pay for marketing. We need additional funds to pay for potentially additional equipment. We need addition, and all of this is built around them going out into the community and using their talents to provide to community organizations. It allows us to impact more community organizations. It allows us to spend more time in the community doing things. So that additional funding, it basically just augments what we've already developed. And we're currently seeking partners for that.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. So I think I want to do one more. So we talked about ramp, and it's ongoing at River Rouge.
Yes, sir.
But we talked about that expanding. If you could flip a switch and expand that to schools throughout, let's just say Michigan for now, what would that switch be?
To make certain that music production programs can receive the same credentialing that in the Michigan Merit curriculum that are received by drama, art, theater, music, choir, band classes as well.
Wow.
That would be huge. And then being able to create an ecosystem here in the state that funnels not only resources into working with some of the existing labs that exist in these buildings that are sitting idle because of the amount of mobile technology that's available. So utilizing those, filling those with equipment that can make this program work and this project work, but also within that ecosystem, utilizing people from the community who know how to work the equipment and empowering them above and beyond being a struggling artist or a basement bedroom producer. You can come in this classroom and you can teach kids for 2 hours a week on how to use it.
Yeah.
You know, that would be my wish. I'm not going to say it's a wish. That's the vision.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So we're gonna cut it there. Like I said, every time you speak, man,
I can talk, brother. I can.
Yeah, and energize and inspire, man. It's just you got it in spades. But this is a podcast, and it's it's a time thing. So
absolutely,
we'll have to do a part 2 and part 3, perhaps. But we always close out with this question: have you ever been on the cover of a magazine?
No.
Never.
No.
Okay. Well, this is a first. All of our participants, all of our guests that come on to our podcast, we placed them on the Dripping in Black magazine cover for that episode. There you are, Mr. Rod Wallace.
Oh man, I love it. I love it.
So that is a parting gift. We will tighten that up, get that out to you.
Man.
And if you look behind me, several of the previous guests, we have them on our wall as well, along with some other dignitaries in our history. So
yes, sir. Yeah. Well, I'm honored to be a part of that, and I'm honored to be. I appreciate sincerely the fact that you asked me to come on. Thank you so very much.
The pleasure is ours. I'm gonna give you a chance to shout out any social media.
Okay.
And take your time with it, because we talked about a few different programs. So I want people to be able to understand how to connect with you for those various programs, like Upward Bound and Amplify and those other things. So.
Okay. You can follow me on Instagram at Where Is Wallace. I'm also on Facebook at Rod Wallace. You can also, for more information about Grove Studios, you can go to grovestudios.space. You can also go to learn more about the Amplify Fellowship. You can go to amplify-fellowship.com. And as far as music, to support my music, you can go to rodwallace.bandcamp.com as well.
All right. So again, pleasure is all ours. And we're going to close out with our final episode, The Last Drip. But we want to thank you, Rod Wallace, for coming out.
Thank you very much.
Check out Rod Wallace's latest project, Zero Noize Podcast with Rod Wallace. The video version is found on Groove Studios channel on YouTube.
A Dripping in Black thanks to Rod Wallace for coming through and discussing his passions for educating and hip hop with us. More importantly, we thank him for the work that he's doing to liberate minds.
However, we have reached the final segment of our podcast called The Last Drip. The Last Drip is the last opportunity for us to squeeze in a bit more of Black excellence for you. In this final segment, we highlight a common thread between our guest and our vast and rich African American history. For this episode, we place our focus on a modern day history-making organization called Hip Hop for Change, Inc. Founded in 2013 by Bay Area rap artist and activist Khafre J. Hip Hop for Change, Inc. is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. It does community outreach in Berkeley and Oakland schools with the mission to use hip hop culture to promote self-determination and activism in the Bay Area of California. This grassroots organization has already made a huge impact, employing almost 1,000 people while raising over $3 million to advance social justice and hip hop activism in the Bay Area. According to Khafre J, Hip Hop for Change is based on 4 principles from the Zulu Nation: peace, love, unity, and having fun. Through this organization's programs, students learn about breakdancing, graffiti art, DJing, and lyricism. Hip Hop for Change educates people about socioeconomic injustices and advocates for solutions through hip hop culture. It raises funds for local causes in historically marginalized and oppressed communities. The organization's primary focus is based on self-determination, which in turn empowers its community to control the cultural narratives, values, and means of production. Both Rod Wallace and Khafre J view hip-hop as a powerful vehicle to create change in their local communities, as well as the world at large. In honor of this common thread, Hip Hop for Change is this episode's last drip. For more on Hip Hop for Change, check out khafrej.com, berkeleyside.com, and hiphopforchange.org. My thanks to all of these websites for the knowledge. Much respect and homage to our vast and rich African American history, and my gratitude to the modern day African American history makers across the world. As usual, I implore you to get up on your African American history. And as always, I implore you to be good, be good, be good. It is a choice.
You have just experienced a Dripping in Black production.